What is going on, guys? This is Coach Ty, and we are back with Keeping It Real with TNL. I'm Coach Ty, as you guys know. That's Coach Lori, and today we have a very special guest with us. This is Neha, VP of Engineering for Virta Health. But before we dive into that, me and Coach Lori are going to talk about the Pareto principle in metabolic health.
Thanks, Ty. It's actually super relevant because in Ivor Cummins' article, he talks about how he goes to the doctor and he does this like CBC and metabolic, all the little blood work that we normally do. That's routine blood work, and it's a hot mess. And I'm going to just totally simmer this down. But I do have the article up hanging on the new Velcro hanging things for everyone to just pick articles to read during warm-ups, right? So he goes in and he's like, ouch, this is a hot mess. I didn't realize that I had gotten to this point. So he asks his physician, what do I do? Not really many answers, right? Oh, medication. It's like, I'll go one step above the physician with top center Curvas. Still no answer for really how to fix this, right? He's like, well, let's go to the guy that runs the hospital. And 3 strikes. And he's like, forget about it. I'm just going to figure it out myself. Because a lot of people really don't want to be on medication their whole life to be, quote, healthy. It kind of feels like nonsense for a lot of us, right? Mm-hmm. So the short of it is, he did his research, he cut out the carbs and sugar, dropped like 50 pounds, blood works better than ever. And that's just the start of it. When you read his article, it's like exciting, like my heart rate. I'm sure my glucose monitor spikes because I'm excited reading his article. But here's this guy, he's this brilliant guy, and he likens it to the Pareto principle of the 80-20 rule, right? And I want you to read the article. I'm not going to ruin it. I'm not going to spoil it or anything. But it always comes back to what you're eating. So it's appropriate leading into this amazing thing called Virta Health that we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. No, I was going to add to that. It is so funny because you're absolutely right. I'm not going to go into the whole article, but I find it interesting that it seems that 80% of the issues can be fixed by doing the most simplest things. And it's the things that nobody ever wants to do. Cutting carbs and sugar and getting a little more working out. It's the most simple thing. And just those 2 combinations put into a consistent habit could be a game changer. But you guys are going to have to look up a little bit more info about that. And we'll probably leave some comments down in the actual YouTube so you guys know where to find the article and you can read it yourself. But we don't want to take up too much time. We want to dive into our conversation with our special guest. So again, guys, this is Neha, and she is with Virta Health. And so prior to us going into that, I'm going to let Coach Lori kind of give you guys a rundown, and then we're going to jump to the interview.
Okay. So what I love is when you Google what is the mission of Virta Health. I'm just going to read it verbatim. Virta is on a mission to reverse type 2 diabetes in 100 million people while setting a new standard of medical care for people living with type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, or obesity. And I love that as someone who has struggled with insulin resistance now twice in their life, right? Early 20s and then again in perimenopause, which is not uncommon. You sort of feel like even when you know things, you're just kind of like out in that boat, just floating with no more. So I love that Virta is like, no, we've got to help people figure that out. So please tell us about yourself and how you became a part of Virta Health. Let's start there.
Yeah. You're clearly not alone. We have so many members, patients who kind of feel the same, right? So, my journey for Virta Health. So my name is Neha. I live in the Bay Area, close by. I have a 4-year-old son. And I've been here in the same place for about, 20 years now. I've been at Virta for 10 years, so almost since its inception. And I had no healthcare experience before this. So this is my first time kind of working in a healthcare company. And 2 things kind of got me to Virta, right? So one is I worked with Sami, who's the co-founder of Virta. I worked with him and Trulia before this. For those of you who know Trulia is basically Zillow, looking for, research for homes and stuff like that. And so I had an opportunity to work with him there. And then, he moved on and kind of started Virta. And if you Google Sami Inkinen, you're going to find that he is basically like a top athlete, always has been, is like a couple of times Ironman winner, et cetera, right? And when he told me why he started Virta, which is basically he was diagnosed pre-diabetic. And he's like, if I'm eating to the T of everything that the guidelines states, and I'm pre-diabetic, like there's so many people who are just like, don't even stand a chance, right? In that sense. So So that was kind of, that resonated with me in terms of doing this. And the other thing he said was, you know, the way he reversed his pre-diabetes is that Dr. Steve Finney, who was the other co-founder of Virta, was basically the scientist behind this research, and he probably has like 40 plus years of research on how nutrition therapy specifically helps here, especially with like insulin intolerance, right? Like, and Dr. Finney talks about this a lot. Like, we don't flinch when people say they're gluten intolerant or they're like they're intolerant to other things, but insulin intolerance is basically carb intolerance. Like, there are bodies that can handle carbs well, and there are bodies that can't handle carbs well, and that threshold just changes with everybody, right? And so, anyway, that's how I ended up at Virta, because I joined to kind of help. I was like, the best case or worst case outcome here is I'm helping people make a healthy change, that get healthier, and in process also kind of help them save a bunch of money, because people, believe it or not, spend so much money on medication today, even with or without insurance. Like, the cost of insulin is ridiculously high. The reason I've stayed this long is the impact we have on patients or members is so much more than that, right? Like, we actually have a patient or member come talk to our company once a week, every Monday, to talk about how Virta has either helped them or any feedback that they have, right? And year over year, I have heard them, the number of people who talk about how much money we save them, or how they don't take any medications, or is way outnumbered by the number of people who talk about just how their life is different, right? And on things that we just take for granted. Like, I'll give you one simple example. Like, there was this woman the other day who was just like, I'm not stressed to go on an airplane anymore because I don't have to ask for a seatbelt extender. Like, it's simple things like that that I don't even think about. But she's like, I have so much anxiety. I had so much stress just getting on an airplane because, I get all these nasty looks from people. And then I've asked the air hostess, and they give me some looks for that. And she's like, just that anxiety is a win for me in life. And it's those things that I just take for granted, which is why I'm here for so long, essentially.
I love that. I love that. And that is a win, because obviously flying itself for some is already stressful.
Yeah.
The fact, if you know that you're a little overweight, that you have to now make this big huge
Exactly.
slow the process, and now she feels like she can now travel and move within the world comfortably. That's see, and what I love about that even more is that may not be a quote unquote a quote unquote skill victory, but
Yeah, exactly.
victory.
We get so
Huge.
many of those.
Yeah, it's amazing. It makes me think. So I've watched Emily Kaplan, the co-founder of Breaking Science, who's interviewed by Chris Cooper, and I actually screenshot or recorded this little 30-second segment, and she's like, it makes me so sad when we'll say, oh, you're obese, just skip a meal.
Exactly.
But you can't skip a meal. There's something physiologically not working. So when you are insulin intolerant, resistant, metabolic syndrome, whatever you want to call it, every time you're eating carbs, your body's just like, sugar.
Exactly.
Like, it's just like, and the fat just stores and stores and stores, and you're constantly hungry. Because what happens if you eat a cookie? You feel hella good until you crash. And you're doing that all day, every day. And it's a really hard cycle to get out of. So to have a company that is like, you're going to tell us more, but I'm assuming there's like an app and there's check-ins and everything. Like, that's so amazing, because everything in life that's worth doing is hard, right? But some things are harder than others, because you're really unwinding the ball of yarn that has become your metabolic system in your body. Right?
Yeah, and the environment doesn't help, right? Like, the environment we're in right now, like, things that don't taste sweet probably have more sugar than you think it does. Like, it's crazy how the environment is not conducive for you to make the change. So it's even harder to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to navigate this maze here. So we're going to kind of switch. I don't know if we could get back. We're just going to switch gears. And I just have the next question, from an engineering standpoint, what were the biggest challenges in building a system that could deliver personalized care to thousands of patients remotely? And how did your team solve it?
Yeah, so it's a fun question. So many things. But I think the fundamental thing that was different for me to think about, right, is one is I come from pure consumer background, meaning that it's like I said, healthcare. This is my first time working in healthcare, and working in healthcare comes with a set of responsibilities, right? Like, you have to make sure the privacy of the patient is intact, to make sure we treat PHI in a compliant way, and we have our system secure enough that other people cannot get in and do all that stuff. So there was all of that, just working in that environment, right? And then the other thing that was interesting was experimentation, right? Like any good product works on, you try something and see if it works, and then you make a change and then see if it works. But doing that with the patient's health is hard, and is a responsibility you want to take very seriously, right? So I think early on, thinking about how to build an engineering system with that in mind, I think we did a lot of things where we partnered very closely with a health coach or with a provider. So for the audience here, Virta actually has like we have employees who are health coaches and doctors. So on staff, there's doctors and health coaches at Virta Health. And so we partnered with them a lot to kind of make sure that when we are building something that is useful for the member, we're building it in a way that we're keeping all these safety guardrails in mind, and then also kind of experimenting in a way that is not harmful for the actual health of the member, right? Like that's the part that we address. Um, I think the second part of your question was like, how did we actually build it? I think the thing that we debate a lot and continuously debate, and we'll talk a little bit about AI in the next couple of questions, but is what is a machine good at doing, and what do we want to leave to the humans, right? And that balance is very important to find. And the world skews one way or the other, especially in today's world. But I think early on at Virta, we were very clear on, the members are here for a reason, right? Because we could ship them food. Like, if we want them to eat a certain way, our business could be we take a bunch of food packets and ship them every day, and that's what you eat. But teaching them to survive in the environment that they're in this lifestyle, is a lifestyle change, right? It's less about counting your carbs and counting your biomarkers. It's more about thriving in the environment that you're in and making your day-to-day choices better. And the machine can help you guide, but the human in the loop, which is our health coach or providers, are the ones who are actually giving you the behavioral support, the emotional support, the mental health support to make those choices in the day-to-day setup. So I think that was the hard part, like figuring out what we want to build, because the machines can build. You can build it. The machine can do anything. It's more about like, what do you actually want it to do? So I think that was a challenging and interesting debate that we kind of figured out as a cross team, essentially, between the healthcare team and
It's very cool. And I didn't know that you guys had coaches and other
Yeah.
staff, which is
Yeah.
crucial because you're getting opinions from obviously people who also been in the field, dealt with clients before,
right.
seeing what works, what might
Yep.
not work. And you guys are allowing them to give the feedback to make everything work that much better and smoother.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
The thing it replaces the human touch.
Yeah, like
The empathy, someone to listen
Exactly.
to, someone to hear you and respond back with feelings and stuff. AI.
exactly.
Like I love that you have both of these things going on. Like, because for me personally, well, like when I started a year ago back in Barbell, like just trying to get back into life after everything pushing me down so far, it was like we talked about it, we celebrated things, I could express frustration, we could relate. Like it's important, and I can't say enough about that. So I love what you guys are doing here. Yeah. So here's a more in-depth question, thinking about the problems with healthcare and where Virta Health comes in. What are the key challenges in healthcare that you aim to solve? Like, what is it like your co-founder who came in with the wrong food pyramid idea?
Yeah.
Like, I can't wait to hear what your perspective is on this. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
So, and you'll be surprised, like the terms that we casually use today in terms of insulin intolerance and meat is good for you, fat is good for you, salt is probably good for you, like would have been so taboo to say 10 years ago. Like that's just not a thing that would be tolerated anyway, right? And now the American Diabetes Association is changing their stance, and like different teams are changing their stance on it. So it's like people are learning more and changing things, right? So I think the biggest challenge, the key challenge that Virta aims to solve in healthcare is primarily the thing that Lori and I were talking about just before this, right? Is food as medicine as a concept, right? Because historically we've been, you're sick, take a pill, and then you're golden, right? And then you get sick again and take a pill and you're golden. And medication obviously has their place in the world. That's why they exist, right? Like there's no discounting that medicines help. but how can we get people to think about food as the first line of defense in terms of medication, and then go to the actual medication if they need it? Because some people will need it, and they should take it. But if that's the first thing you move towards, then you're kind of doing a disservice for yourself without understanding what other problems that might cause for you if you don't even give food a shot. So that's, I think, if I'm putting it in a nutshell, that's the Virta challenge, right? Like, how do you think of food as medicine in partnership with then, exercise and other things like that? Because again, you were just talking about this, like, you can't outrun a bad diet. You can eat, if you eat like super healthy, or if you eat super unhealthy, but like run 8 hours a day, it's still not going to make a difference. So I think it's that lifestyle change is what I after.
That makes perfect sense. I was just gonna say, yeah, no, that's exactly one of those struggles, and I love how you said the food is medicine, and it's, people don't realize it. It's the one thing that most of us probably do every day.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it's the probably one thing that we should learn how to do right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that you guys are taking a strong stance and trying to get that out to the public,
Mm-hmm.
and also healing others who've already gone down that road
Right.
with the same method,
Mhm.
like, it just proves, like, guys, let's just fix what we're putting in our mouths. Basically.
It's harder. It's harder to do than easier said than done, right? Because like, the environment is not conducive. Like, unless you really know how to read the labels, you are going to consume sugar for things that don't taste sweet. And that's the early learnings we had from our members, where they just, they don't know what they don't know. And so, like, getting them to learn to know even what they should and shouldn't eat is the hard part.
And then there's times that it's also tough. Like, I know, like, you could go to Costco and get some video rice, and
Yeah.
get 0 grams of sugar.
Exactly.
So rice is
Exactly.
rice is spike insulin, and so
Yeah.
you may think, no, I'm doing good.
Yeah.
It's 0 grams,
Exactly.
but you're still having an insulin spike.
Exactly.
It definitely takes a lot of knowledge to
Yep.
navigate. But we're going to go into the next question. So, you monitor patients daily and make real-time interventions. How do you balance automation with the human coaching in the system, and what role does AI play in the equation, if any?
Yeah. So, like I was saying, we debated this a lot early on, right? And I think we are kind of systematically aligned. Like, the reason we have hundreds of thousands of patients who are successful on Virta is because we have the coach provider, right? So the way we think about this is, essentially, how can we build? So the treatment is delivered digitally. You have an app, and then you interact with the coach or the provider through the app. Sometimes there's phone calls, but most of it is through the app. And then we give you a kit when you start. So the kit has like a scale and a glucose meter, a ketone meter, and a bunch of other things that come with it. And so that's how we know whether you're making progress or not, right? Based on the food changes. Because glucose is a good indicator, but it's a lagging indicator, right? Like A1C is a lagging indicator that you will know 3 months after you make a change to your eating habits. Your weight and your ketones primarily will be immediate. Like, you will immediately see an impact to your ketones and your weight. Well, weight probably over the week, but ketones probably over the hours, right? So that's why that's what we use to monitor them. Having said that, I think, like, finding the right balance between how can we, we kind of think about AI in two forms. One is, what can we do from an AI perspective to answer the in the moment questions, right? Like, I walk into Costco and I'm looking at this aisle and I take a picture of this thing and say, can I eat this or not? That's simple as that.
Yeah.
I don't need a health coach to tell me that. Like, a system can look at it and tell you. But if I'm like in panic mode and I was like, oh, I made I screwed up, I ate something that I shouldn't have yesterday, and now I'm going to beat up myself over it and just like go spiral downhill. That's where a health coach can come in and be like, hey, it happens. Stuff happens.
Yeah, crumble cookie.
Yeah, exactly. Like, or the crumble cookie moment is the easier part, right? Like, people have all sorts of hard things in their life. People have deaths in the family. People have, like, people lose jobs. It's just so many stressors in life that food is the thing that is soothing for most people. That's where you need a human, right? So how can we leverage AI or a system to make our internal humans as powerful as possible, right? So give the coaches the right information at the right time so they can intervene with the member when we know they're in that panic mode. And then also take some things off of the plate that we don't need them to answer, right? Like, we don't need them to tell you that you can't eat ice cream. Like, if someone comes and says, can I eat ice cream? I think the answer is probably going to be like, it depends. I think the answer is not no, because it depends on what you've done with the rest of your eating system. But you don't need a coach to answer that question. So I think that's how we kind of think about
Like
those 2 weeks to there.
I need an AI. My personal training clients will FaceTime me from the store. Can I have this? I'll be like, AI said no. No, but I've been doing that for 11 years.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah.
It would be easier. Because it's a simple,
Yeah, and
like it's a hard no on the 1 pound bag of cookies.
exactly. Yeah,
For
exactly.
dinner by myself. No.
No.
No. So yeah, that makes sense. I love that. Okay, so I love this question. What is one insight your team discovered from the data or just talking to patients that completely surprised you and ended up changing the way you support patients?
Yeah.
You did.
So yeah. I think there's maybe a one or two that I might highlight. So the first one is interesting, especially me coming from like an engineering background, right? Like we very early on, like we've been evidence based for a while. If you look up Virta Health, there's a bunch of papers that are peer reviewed and a bunch of clinical trials that we did early on. And one of the clinical trials was, can we deliver the same outcomes digitally with no face to face, coaching interaction?
Yeah.
The same way as we would if like a person came into a class, essentially, right? So we did a trial of like a cohort of people who would come into Indiana University. We partnered with them, and there'll be people who would come into actual university to talk to a coach, and then you would try a different cohort and deliver the treatment digitally. And I think most of us recognize that the results will not be the same, right? Because it's a different setup of having a physical human in front of you versus digital thing. Surprisingly, actually, were the results were at par. We were able to deliver the same outcomes, same number of medications taken off, same number of weight loss, same number of insulin resistance changes digitally. The time we found out that it didn't work is if I just took the coach completely out, right? It's like that, like they didn't have access to it. So the I think the insight there was the data is telling us that we can deliver this treatment digitally as long as we still find some way to keep the human in the loop to kind of get access to those numbers. Yeah, so I think that was one big insight. I think the other one, which is interesting, which I think in hindsight, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? But our members with different metabolic health issues, right? Like a type 2 member is highly motivated, right? Like they come in and they're like, we're ready to go, we've tried everything, and we just need to get off this insulin. Versus the obesity members are less motivated. Like we have to really we've really be because a lifestyle change is hard, right? But then in hindsight, when you look at it, that makes sense. Like a type 2 member has a lot of things to lose, right? Like they're poking themselves every day with all these medications. They are probably about to lose like a body part, about to lose a limb, they want to lose their eyesight. Like they're highly motivated to do this. The obesity and the pre-D patients just don't know they're on the same path. They're not there yet, but so their motivation is slightly lower than. So I think that what the data told us is educating these people to catch them before they hit that stage is important, right? And so how can we then, so the way we change the treatment or the way we change the talking about it is for the type 2s, we are, here's what you need to change. Here's how you go. For the obesity and the pre-D, it's a little bit more around here's the education around what can happen, right? Or what trajectory you're on and why you're here in the first place and what kind of motivates you to kind of drive this change. So that was interesting. Like, I would imagine that anyone who's coming seeking for help already is in here motivated, and that's not really true. It kind of varies. The minute you tell them, like they come in highly motivated, but the minute you tell them you cannot eat bread from tomorrow, they're like, I don't know if I can do this.
I completely get that. That makes sense.
I was just gonna say, like the last 4 years, it was, and the thing is, like I've been 235 pounds, right? I've been 135 pounds, and I'm just like pounds over that now that may or may not go away. Well, it happens when it happens, but the motivating factor was always to live for my daughter to be healthy and have a life. But I noticed in my daughter and like younger girls, they went from like the 00 putting us in eating disorders when I was in high school to everybody can be super overweight and still healthy like this. So all of a sudden it was one extreme to the other. And nobody should body shame anyone regardless. But you cannot be 200, 300 pounds overweight and be healthy. You can't. So the last few years has been a really weird switch from one extreme to the other. And so you see people like back in the day, I mean, through me, and they were eating disorder in high school was that size 6, 5'6" or 7'8" was huge compared to everyone like
Right.
it's
Like
a double
zeros.
zero, right? Which I was never going to be. I could never to be 5'8" and skinny, so I'm like 5'2.5", and I lift heavy. So here we are, right? But it's that just causes just as much harm on the opposite. Because now people don't give a shit about their blood work and their health, and they're just like, oh, whatever. Until they finally get a point to where they're like, okay, I can't go clubbing with my friends. I run out of energy. They have like they have a vibe, but it's not like some pit.
Right.
And that's everything. Right. As a parent, you're like, gotta live. I got these kids. I want to see grandkids and weddings and everything.
You'll be surprised how many people switch as soon as they hear that, right? Like when they start realizing that they might not be alive for their grandkids' like wedding, flip. It's like a switch flip in the brain where things start changing really, really fast.
Yeah. So I hope that, perhaps the thing that we've learned for the past 4 years is that we don't need to over sexualize and dramatize either end of the spectrum extreme, but maybe just be nicer people and realize that some people are going through some things and that we all should care about our health and we should want to be healthy again. Right. Like the sexy thing should be being healthy again. And that's kind of like, maybe we'll come into that.
Yeah.
Next era of
the warriors.
Switch of things. I don't know, but it hit me how it's so different from when I was in high school. So my daughter and I see kids pre-diabetic, insulin resistance, polycystic ovarian syndrome, just kind of snowballing, right? PCHS.
Yeah.
Because they do really go and crumble and eat a whole cookie. It's 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's very, very good stuff. I was just thinking too, it is so true too. Like obviously hearing that you've been able to witness it, seeing it so often, and then knowing that it just kind of goes to show, and we all kind of know this, but someone at rock bottom is more likely to want to climb out than someone who hasn't quite reached that point yet. And it's so scary because in this field, you don't want someone to
exactly. You don't want them. Exactly.
Like if I'm having to tell you that you're going to lose a limb, and then you're going to change, we've gone down a pretty steep road. So I could see how someone who's at that point is going to make the switch, and then someone who's like, well, maybe they're going to tell me what I want to finally hear, that I could still do something.
Exactly.
When you hit them with the facts, like, damn it.
Really? Like,
how to start?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the GLP-1 stuff is kind of that, right? Because people are like, I saw this New York Times front page thing, which is so scary. It's like the title said something to the order of like, eat, inject, eat, or eat, inject, repeat, or something like that. Basically, it was like, oh yeah, you just eat and then you inject it, and then it'll fine, you eat again. And at some point, that comes back to bite you, right? Like, again, GLP-1s have their place for a reason, but the way we're using that now is exactly that, because that is people's solution, being like, that is telling me I can do whatever I want and just like take this medication. But then to your point, you can't be called healthy if you're on a lifelong medication. Like that just doesn't.
And eventually work itself out. Like the only prescription that doesn't have a side effect, and I made this up in my mind, is eating right and exercise. Because it doesn't cause liver failure. Like even now, like sinus infection, I'm like holistic. I'm still in like I'm not getting on pain pill. I'm not that's it. Like I'm gonna do right and it's gonna be okay. Because I can remember just with my thyroid problem, they're like, you're gonna be on this medication for life. And like the number one side effect is liver failure. And so in my little mind, I'm like, well, if I start at like 32, I could be dead by 50, right? Like, so what are we doing here? Well, there's no way to cure it. Well, the hell there isn't. Like there is. But it's whether it's Ozempic, insulin, all the antibiotics, medications, diet pills, taking glucophage or metformin for weight loss instead. Whatever it is, there's a side effect.
Correct.
And you're not impervious to it catching up to you.
Right. And again, like you were saying, like some people need it and they really are in that bottom stage that you need that medication, but you kind of have familiarized, if that's the right word, medication. Like the medication taking is not a big deal anymore, which it should be, because when you're taking medication, something is wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I remember when I would go like at my grandparents' house, if I would see like orange pills, I'd go, oh, don't touch it. Whoa, what's that? Yeah.
No,
what's going on? Yeah. For us, something must be wrong.
Right.
We really have normalized that people will say they're healthy I'm gonna throw my mom under the bus. She's a cancer survivor. She had it when I was 11, bladder cancer, didn't have chemo and radiation back then. Maybe she's 72. But like she has diverticulitis or diverticulosis, and then she gets like asthma. And she'll stack like three things and talk about how healthy she is because she rides her bike every day. And then she tells me she doesn't eat gluten. Every single time we're out, she's eating bread. I'm like, it takes 90 days to get that out of your system. It's so glyphosate. Like, what do you like? Like I'm super healthy. Talk to me when your blood work is fine. And that's the other thing. Oh, my blood pressure is getting high. And now my cholesterol. And I'm like, we talked about cholesterol. Well, they want to put me on cholesterol meds. Like, I'm not taking care of you when you get Alzheimer's from the cholesterol med. Like, that's not healthy. She's healthier than most people 72 that don't walk and don't get out of the house to play with grandkids. But when you're off all your meds, we'll give you the big H for health, right?
Absolutely.
At any age. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next question. So let's talk the onboarding process. I'm obviously curious, what exactly happens in the first 72 hours, let's say, of someone joining Virta, and how do you ensure they feel supported and empowered from day one out the gate?
Yeah, so I think this is where like two things meet together, right? So first, you should think about Virta as an actual digital clinic. Means, like I said, we have providers and coaches. So when you walk into a clinic for the first time, you kind of fill out a form that talks about your health history and blah 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 blah. So we do that too. Like we actually have, but it's all digital, right? So we collect that information from the user or from the member, and then we actually, depending on and there's some questions in there about like knowledge, right? Like, do they even know what Virta is? What are we going to ask them to do, right? Because when they come in, they don't really know what they're getting into, right? They just know because they come in through their employers. Like, this is a benefit. Virta is a benefit that their employers provide to them. You can join Virta directly as well, but we don't get that many members directly through Virta. It's all a benefit based through employers for them. So, when they're coming in, they're not really sure what they're getting into. So we ask them about, what is. We ask them two primary questions, like how much do they know about what the goal here is, and why are they here, right? Because that, to your point, like anything we're doing is hard. It does get hard, right? And so anchoring them back, like why are they here, kind of helps a lot. And then the third thing we try to find out is like what is their actual lifestyle, right? Because if you ask them to do something that is completely devoid, that doesn't fit in their current lifestyle, it's just not going to happen, right? I'll give you an example. We have like we have Chickasaw Nation is one of our clients. So, and all of the employees of Chickasaw Nation actually get Virta as a benefit. But most of those people work in a casino, right? And eat like 4 of their meals or 3 of their meals in a casino. Now, if we don't know that, and if we tell them to like eat completely plant, whatever, a home cooked meal, it's just not practical for them to do. So how do we kind of, fit this in their lifestyle is important. So we ask a bunch of questions around that. And then they actually get to talk to a doctor. So the doctor kind of validates and sees, what their medications are, how this works for them, and, like, depending on your metabolic issue. And then if they need it, we also have them talk to another care team member that kind of walks them through how they can fit this in their lifestyle, right? Like, because, there are lots of questions to your point, like, my dad isn't in. If I tell him he can't eat rice, he's not even going to look at me. Like, it's just not a thing.
It's not even an option.
It's not an option then. But, so in that case, we can be like, well, sure, you eat like 2 bowls of rice a day, eat 1/4 of a bowl, like, in a day, and see what happens. So starting to make these smaller changes, like even, I'm sure you guys see this all the time in your coaching experience too, but people do not realize how many liquid calories they consume in a day, right? Yeah. So just by cutting that out, just by cutting that sugar out, they see changes in their life, right? So I think we to your question, we ask that question and then have them talk to somebody in there, and then we start to ask them to make small changes in their day-to-day life, right? Because again, like cut a soda out, or cut all soda out for a week, or just stop eating the chocolate that you eat after dinner every day, or just like making those small changes. Because as soon as they see an impact, either to their weight or they're just feeling like you wake up, feeling so much more energized. Like I tell my family every time, you don't need coffee when you wake up. Like you wake up super clear, non-foggy. If you're like, oh sugar, you don't. Usually coffee is to kickstart your body. You don't need it. You'll start feeling that way. So we want to get them to feeling that way, and then this magic after that, because they realize and they make those changes on their own. So the first 72 hours is to get them to feel the impact of the change that they're trying to make.
Oh, I got the chill. That was so amazing. I feel so blessed that you found our gym and like, and it was so meant to be on an aside. It was the Monday fix about insulin resistance, and Neha spoke up about it, and then Ty tells me, and then a week later, I'm on a Zoom call with last week's talking about Virta Health, and I'm like, and then yesterday's medical society thing was about you cannot run about diet. I'm like, that's what I feel like everything's just kind of like in line. I feel like the universe of health is aligned and we're all in it. And I get so excited. If you can't tell by like the steam coming off me, I'm sweating. I'm so excited right now thinking about it. But yeah, okay. So back to Virta. I love this. So in your opinion, how will tech-enabled care transform the entire healthcare industry in the next 5 years? And what is Virta building now that nobody's talking about yet? Anything new coming up or that you could talk about, of course?
Yeah. So maybe I'll answer it in the two-part questions. I'll answer it in two different forms. So one, I truly believe that I think the biggest impact tech can have in a healthcare system is to find ways to help the patient or the member in the moment, right? Because that the in the moment pieces are where the lapses happen, and you cannot expect a coach or a doctor to be just available 24 hours, right? It's not a thing. And so, and this is not just to diabetes, by the way. This is like diabetes. Obviously, think about MSK, think about like other. It can expand to any healthcare system, right? Like having something that you can go to that will tell you what to do right now. That is mostly like like, and sometimes you can't, right? Sometimes that's why we have like if you have an emergency, call 911. Like that is still a thing. But I think tech can enable getting that in the moment between the point to point connections between humans across the area. So I think we will see a lot more of that in healthcare over the next 5 years, especially with AI in the process as well. Okay. Speaking of like what Virta will be doing it over the next 5 years. I think it's two forms, right? Like I said, I think we are always in the quest of like how can we make the human more powerful, whether that is a member directly by giving them more information or education, or even like again small lifestyle changes, or our internal team members to get them to understand the physiological health about the member that they're talking about, so they can make the best decision for them, right? Because now in this like information dense world, there's data about a human in so many different forms, right? And if you make another human parse that data, it's just you're going to miss something. There's a lot of things that you're going to miss from a context perspective. So how can we actually create this context from a technology standpoint that me as a coach or me as a doctor, it can up level my skills by just having more information and context about the human that I'm about to treat. The other thing that I think I can probably say to some degree is if you look at the papers that we have published so far from Virta Health, we know that this nutritional therapy helps not just type 2 and not just obesity, but primarily a lot of or most of the inflammation related diseases, right? So sleep apnea, any of the liver cirrhosis issues that we talk about, or even like some of the autoimmune diseases that are out there, right? And so I can see us kind of expanding to that pool. The reason we started with honestly with type 2 is because it is one of the biggest diseases impacting not just the US but the world, right? And you started this talk off with like the mission. When we started 10 years ago, the mission was 100 million people because that's what the type 2 range is. If you account for obesity today, I think we're looking at 1 billion people across the world, which is kind of sad. But like, there's 1 billion people in the world who are living with obesity, as in morbid obesity, right, where they can't do the day-to-day functions like they should be. So like I can, and then if you add other diseases, like the impact of this disease, right? So I can imagine Virta being, I'm hoping, Virta is kind of spoken of as cavalierly or as normally as an Ozempic or as a GLP-1, because it probably has the same impact, if not better, and with least amount of side effects and more sustainable over time. So
and plus you give people, like you talked about, like if I go take Ozempic and I'm like, yeah, I'm losing weight, I'm losing 5 pounds a week with this shot, and I'm still eating like crap when I eat, and then I stop taking it, I've never fixed the problem, which is why I felt the need to eat that. Right. Lack of understanding.
Right.
Some people just don't know.
Right.
Some people think, a burger and a big bun with a ton of ketchup, which is chock full of
ketchup is
holy cow. Like you got to find that organic sugar-free ketchup. Your kids are going to be like,
This
"What
is
happened
disgusting.
to the ketchup?" But then they're not going to be all whacked out full of sugar after their ketchup burger at dinner before bedtime, right? But like, is it that? Is it emotional?
Mhm.
What about the emotional eaters?
Mhm.
What about the people who've been through hella trauma and that's their crutch? Or what about the people that have a straight addiction? Like
Right.
it doesn't have to be alcohol, drugs, or sex. Sugar addiction is
it's
like an
real.
addiction, right? Some people, you can see them. They're like, especially I've seen this in recovered alcoholics. They're done drinking alcohol, but they dive into sugar
Mhm.
because there's
They're like just compensating.
yeah. And so I there's a million reasons why I don't think Ozempic is great for just people looking for vanity pound. Like if you're 400 pounds overweight,
Yeah.
and you're type 2 diabetic, it was made for you.
Right.
But it should never be because you don't feel like working out eating right
Exactly.
to get to a place. And because the blindness, the osteoporosis, the gallbladder, losing that, the thyroid, the kidney issues, like you can't get that back. Like, and if you're blind, why do you care if you're thin? You can't see yourself in there.
Right.
Like it's crazy. So Virta Health is like coming in, like talking to you and helping you work through how and why we're here, and ensuring that as life continues on, we have skills to take a step back and stop if we start taking the wrong path again.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's legit.
Yeah, like and we talk about for some reason we're going to this state now where we talk about like either or like medication or food, and in some cases the cases it probably is medication and food. To your point,
Yeah.
if you're 500, 600 pounds, right? You're not gonna. You might want to actually still start with the GLP-1 to get to your point. But then if you just continue that and don't make a lifestyle change, you're not really doing anything, right? So you kind of only have like two tricks in your bag, really. It's either medication and lifestyle change or just lifestyle change, but it's never just medication because that just doesn't it's not sustainable over. So
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Oh yeah, this was a very good conversation. Obviously, those numbers are it is very scary. Dude, I remember, we would say that more people probably die from car accidents and other things, but now no, it's chronic disease of food and failure to eat the right stuff.
Yeah.
That is killing off people like World War II.
And it's unfortunately just getting worse, right? Because I think if you look at, to your point, if you look at the kids of our generation right now, the trajectory is just in the wrong direction, right? Like there's this not going on the morbid note, but like there's cities and locations in California where they predict that the parents will outlive the kids at this point because of
That makes me
like that's just it's and it's reality. And so unless we change just this all starts at home, right? Unless we change the kind of thinking about food at a home and family level, they're kind of not. We can't expect the government to change anything. Like it's kind of it has to be at our own individual.
Yeah, you have to want to make the peace, and you have to want to have to pass that on to your family.
Exactly.
And that's like the hardest thing. So me and Coach Lori had an episode about parents and kids, and like, look, I know it may be easy to just be like, here's some chicken nuggets, go away and watch this iPad, but they don't know, like, you are literally sitting down the same road that most of us had to overcome. And it's like, I would rather deal with the kid angry for a night and actually learning to eat right than just to keep on poisoning him just so I don't have to deal with it.
Okay.
And it's a tough one. It's a tough one being a parent. So this conversation was very deep. There's a lot that we could go, but we know that we got to keep a tight schedule. That said, you're going to be on the hot seat now.
Okay.
The hot seat is more fun. We are going to have some fun. So these questions are very random. I'm going to ask the first one. The only reason I'm doing that so that I can give Lori some time to think of what she may want to ask you. And then we're just going to go back and forth and keep it at 5. So I'll probably ask the last one, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
And then we'll think of some stuff. And then we'll go from there. So I will give you a nice little softball lob out. What is your favorite place in the world to travel to?
Oh, I'm going to say India, just because there's a lot of family back home. So I grew up in India, so we go, and my little one now has a bunch of and I have great grandparents alive as well. So we have a lot of large families of folks.
That was so wonderful. I love that. Where's your favorite restaurant in the area that you can enjoy and eat healthy and the whole family will go? That's always what people are looking for. Where's a good place to go eat if I'm taking a night off?
That's a good question. I think Danville downtown has a couple that I like. There's Peasant of the Bear is one, and then there's a Mexican place which I'm totally not remembering the name of. Solito.
Oh, sweet. I know.
So then, and I think like
But
yeah.
they, you know,
So those are my two
those
girls.
are really healthy too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
All right. Next question. So it's gonna be a little bit tough, but I threw it in here. What's your favorite book?
Ooh, that is hard. What's my favorite book? Uh, there's again, I'm very bad at names, as you can tell. There is I think it's called like Guns and Diseases or something like that. Like, but basically, there's a book that essentially talks about how the industrial revolution has changed the way we do everything, right, across the world.
Right now.
I, I think it's called Guns and Disease or something like that. But basically, it's essentially that, right? It's like there was a pre-industrial revolution world and a post-industrial revolution world, and the impact of the industrial revolution is so wide that we don't even think about. Like, the fact that we invented steel has an impact of why we eat corn-based things everywhere. Like, like the story is pretty, like when you read it, it was like this makes sense, but you wouldn't make that connection
Without reading the
Mhm.
book. Oh wow. Okay, that sounds like I'm not getting to.
I can't focus right now. I'm like a kid who just found out she's going to Disneyland. I'm like so excited right now. It's crazy. Okay. Let's think of a good question. I can come back off the high. This is the high that you feel when you eat well and you work out and you surround yourself with amazing people and you just share your truth and like you just this is where you reside. You're elevated. I love it. Okay, so you're a 4-year-old.
Yes.
Son or daughter? Son. Your son. Where is your favorite place to go have mother, son, to go outing with?
Ooh. So it's easy. He loves there's a park right across the school. It's in Pleasanton, I think it's called Owens Park. Yeah. I can take him there for hours. It literally has just like 5 swings and 5 slides and 5 like climbing things. But like we have a ball. Every time I've taken him there, we've come home both feeling very happy and satisfied and like excited. So it's not it's easy. I guess it's like yeah, you take him to a nice park and he's very, very happy with it. Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that you're still taking your kid outside. Wow.
Oh yeah,
Ridiculous.
he is an energy ball. He's not like me at all. He's like my husband, and so he basically is bouncing off the walls most of the time. So I have to take him out because he does a lot of outdoor stuff. Otherwise, he doesn't sleep. So it's awesome.
All right, last one. This is one that we've asked on almost every show. I'm going to throw it at you. If you could have dinner with anybody dead or alive and ask them anything you want, talk about them with anything in the world, and they will tell you everything, who would that individual be?
Wow, wait, dead or alive or dead?
Yes, dead
Dead
or
or
alive.
alive.
Yeah. Like it could be like someone like, I don't know, let's draw it right for like Beyonce, or it could be Jesus. Like that. That's what I'm saying. And we could be that far on the spectrum here.
I'm a hardcore tech person, so I'm probably gonna say Steve Jobs primarily because we talk a lot about like his genius and blah 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 blah. But if you read his biography, right, there's some like centric moments in there, and so I want to kind of understand now how he balances like quote unquote crazy side versus the stable side, and how did he actually make magic out of it? Because he did. He found a way to kind of marry the two together well, and then create magic. So I would be like, he spent some time in India as well with the whole spiritual journey, and I'm not a very spiritual person, but I kind of that's why I'm like the data and the logic makes sense. That part doesn't make sense to me, so I would love to hear how we marry the two.
Yeah, love that. That's awesome.
All right. So guys, hold on. Maybe I should have moved. Yeah. About it. So guys, hold on real quick, Lori. I don't want to take away. Do you have any more questions?
We're gonna have like a date. Just a healthy lunch. Whatever. Work out in Salitos. That'd be good. Sorry, go ahead.
So, guys, we just want to thank you very much for tuning in. But most and foremost, we want to thank you for coming and taking time out of your day to come and speak. And obviously, the stuff that you bought was absolute gold. Me and Coach Lori try to tell everybody some of these things, and it's always nice when someone else comes in and says, "No, this is actually how it works." It's like hearing something from your mom and dad, and then hearing someone who,
Yeah.
oh, really?
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
This is so new right now.
It's the first time. So it's obviously cool that you were willing to come in here and talk about that. We appreciate that so much.
No, thank you for having me. Again, to Laura's point, I'm glad I found the gym. I was very, very concerned about joining CrossFit early on because I'm like, I'm going to break something. Like, it feels like it's very, from the outside, it felt like, it was very like, you have to be able to lift so much and blah, blah, blah. But it's been such an amazing experience. I'm on week 8 now. Yeah, in this gym. So super excited. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, if you already don't know, you can follow me at Coach Ty 925. You can follow Coach Lori at Coach Lori 925. You can follow the gym at CrossFit SR 925. And last but not least, I'd like to say if they want to, what's the best way if somebody is looking at what Virta Health we help them with, or how can they find it?
Yeah, so you can just look for Virta Health, it'll show up, or then there's Virta Health on Instagram, just Virta Health, and follow that, and then you'll see a bunch of ways to get in there.
It's been incredible. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll see you.